a Sharia fiqh principle, al-Gorm bil Ghanam. Is that right, brother? Al-Gorm bil Ghanam, right? Which means you have to accept the risk. That every business venture entails risk, and risk is actually what makes profit moral, right? You're only really entitled to profit if you take a risk. This is an Islamic interpretation, right? That's why riba is haram, because there's no risk. The bank just gets whatever, 3%, 5%, 6%, whatever, right? You know the old joke about bankers, right? Banking is a, what do they say? A 3-6-3 business, right? You borrow money at 3%, you lend money at 6%, and you're on the golf course by 3 in the afternoon. Right? No risk, right? You just spend your life golfing because you're not taking any risk. It's just dandy. Everything's just good. So there's some risk here. There's some risk here. That you have to take. But that's what makes it moral. That's what makes the profit moral, right? The profit is only moral if you take risk. If you're just one of these banks that's just doing nothing, just making money off money, then you are not taking any risk. And the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he enjoined against that, right? He said, don't trade like for like. Don't trade, you can't trade gold for gold, you can't trade silver for silver, you can't trade barley for barley, right? You can't trade money for money. You have to trade it for things that would be different. There's another hadith about, is it Bilal and the dates? Yeah. He said, Bilal come, he said, oh, Prophet, you know, we have these wonderful dates, and we're trading them. How do they work? They take the dates, and they were trading them like for like. He said, we trade two times of our inferior dates for one of their superior dates. The Prophet said, no, don't do that. You have to trade the dates for something else first, some silver or gold or something else, and then you buy the dates, right? So again, you have to take some risk when you're doing this. Okay, so what does this all mean? What does this all mean? Well, I guess I think this is where the real potential of Islamic finance is really in this equity-based model. Because we know that debt creates problems. And how do we know that debt creates a lot of problems? Well, we have evidence. And the evidence came back in 2008 in the form of the financial crisis, right? Financial crisis. And that was a debt-driven crisis. As Brother Rehan said, you know, they're giving all these ninja loans, these Nina loans, no income, no assets. You don't have a job, you go into the bank, they lend you $500,000 to go buy a house, right? That's how the system was working. And it was all fueled by debt. Well, what does debt create? Debt creates this thing called leverage. Massive amounts of leverage. Because what you end up doing is you take someone else's money and you go and you lend it to someone else, and based on your little bit of money, you know, you have, I don't know, $1 million, but you use that $1 million to borrow $100 million, then you go lend that out. Creates a lot of growth, very fast growth, very rapid growth, but also unstable growth. And then the system collapses. So the potential to me for Islamic finance is that it puts limits on leverage. You can only provide the capital you already have. You can't use your capital to go get some other capital and then, you know, do some building boom in Tokyo or Hong Kong or something with it and create all this paper money that then falls apart like a house of cards. So I think it's here where the potential of Islamic finance really is on offer. It's in the fact that because it's equity-based, because you can only put out on the street the capital you already have, not the capital that, you know, someone else has, and you're using your capital to leverage, you know, 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 times the amount of capital that you have, which is a lot of what these financial firms were doing during the crisis. That's what creates the instability, right? Might create a lot of wealth, but it also creates this instability. So you might have slower growth, you might have not as extreme fast growth. You might not benefit the 1%, but you might have more stability, you might have less volatility, and you might have a more equitable and judicious economy in the long term. And it's not only Islamic finance experts who are making this argument. In fact, there's some very influential economists at places like Harvard University. I'm sure you've all heard of Harvard University. Who hasn't? But people like Carmen Reinhart and Kenneth Rogoff. Kenneth Rogoff, very famous economist. He's argued that leverage is what created the crisis, and that we need systems of equity-based finance in order to put these kind of brakes on leverage. So, I'm just going to conclude here by coming back to something I said at the outset. And I think this is really what the message I'd like to leave you with, is that, well, what is this going to look like? Well, we have some charts, we have some ideas, but there's a lot of the details have yet to be worked out. A lot of the finer points of what Islamic finance is going to look like in the long term, we don't actually really know, right? How do you convince someone to lend money and absorb all the risk? What kind of mechanisms might be to manage that risk? Well, a lot of these questions have not been figured out in their full iteration yet. And a lot of this work is going on, but there's a whole lot more work to be done. And so if I had to conclude, I would say that I think that's where the opportunity is. The opportunity is for everyone collectively to go out and try to figure out what's this going to look like. Maybe figure it out in our own activities, or if we have the time, we can go do research, we can go do academic study, and we can actually figure out how might an equity-based system work in practice. A lot of that work is going on. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on in Malaysia on this, in other places as well. But I think there's a tremendous opportunity there to do more work and to really fine-tune a lot of these ideas and contracts and put them into practice in new, innovative, and experimental ways. So I think a lot of these questions are open, and I think to anyone who's interested in this, I would encourage you to pursue this in your own lives and on your own time. So I think with that, I conclude, and I would thank you very much for your attention. Oh yeah, absolutely. Okay.
One question actually.
Yeah, so what we'll do, I don't have as big of a voice as the doctor over here, so I'll have to use the mic. So we'll give some time for some questions and answers. I'm sure, both talks have been very informative, and I benefit a lot from hearing this. Sometimes when people think of imams or religious leaders, they think of someone that knows every single thing in every single field, but that's very far from the truth. There are special fields within Islamic sciences that needs experts, that needs people that have dedicated many years, such as these two speakers. So whenever we have the opportunity, the chance for someone like them to come over to benefit this community, we try to utilize as much of their knowledge as possible. So if you have any questions, please ask them, and I'm sure the doctor will be able to answer as much as possible. And with Brother Rehan, actually we have later on during the day, so yeah.
You're on the hot seat now.
Oh yeah. I was trying to get off it. Yes.
So brother, you spent time in Malaysia when Mahathir Mohamad was leading the country, I believe. And so you met, and you also, the question is about money. And you lead to it a little bit about mentioning some ahadis on money. You know, Islamically, there's 7 commodities that can be used as money. Mahathir tried to, well, it's about gold, the standard that was abandoned about 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So no currency is backed by gold,
Right.
or any of those 7
Right.
commodities. Mahathir actually tried to bring the gold standard and in the form of dinar,
Gold dinar.
gold dinar. Were you around that time? Do you know what happened?
It actually wasn't, my understanding is it wasn't Mahathir, but it was, the gold dinar was introduced in a northern state of Malaysia. I think it was Kelantan. And it was one of the more devout states, Islamically devout states in Malaysia, where actually the Islamic opposition party, something called PAS, is very influential. And I'm not a huge expert on this, but the experiment, they brought in the gold dinar and the silver dirham. The experiment didn't go so well. And I think actually this is an excellent question. Because you put your finger on one of the real sticking points in Islamic finance. But it's also one of the big, to my mind, opportunities. It's one of the big opportunities. And the sticking point is this, is that, well, one of the things is, if you go ask 10 economists what money is, they'll give you 10 different answers. So there really is no consensus today. I mean, we go around and, that's something that actually fascinates me, but we go around and we use money all the time, right? We use it all the time. You can't get by, can't live in Canada and not use money. I mean, maybe you can if you move up to northern BC and, you know, go hunting and fishing all the time for your food. But most of us don't do that. The vast majority of us don't do that. So money is ubiquitous. But one of the things that's really actually interesting is we don't actually understand and we don't have a firm consensus as to what money is. But one of the ways, modern money, in many respects, is debt. Now why do I say money is debt? Well, you think about most of the money in our financial system. How is money created? Well, we think of money as this stuff that the Bank of Canada makes, right? Puts the picture of the Queen on it.